Retro.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this week we are joined by a guest, one of our favorites. They're all our favorites, but you know. Anyways, Ross Hollebon is coming back to the show. You know him from his work on Fantha Tracks and, of course, the Album Cockpit Podcast. Ross, welcome back.
Dennis, Jay, how are you? It's great to be back, and it's great to be talking about this film that brought so many of us back.
Indeed.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here, Ross.
Yeah, it is always fun. Even our warm-up chat beforehand, just catching up with how busy the three of us and all of our friends always are, but that makes these times special when you do get to catch up.
Indeed. Yeah. And we were just all talking about being at Celebration. And so super excited for that. Super excited to see everybody. As we were talking about in our last news episode, or by the time this comes out, 2 news episodes ago, I know a lot of people had trouble getting Celebration tickets, but we are holding out hope that everyone's going to get tickets and be able to join us there, and that we will all be able to reunite and see each other for the first time in 5 years.
Yes.
So
yes.
Everyone hang in there and let us know if you've got your tickets, and we're going to try and help everybody get there at this point. Okay, Jay, before we get started, you want to remind everybody where we can be found on social media?
My pleasure as always. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is line. The signal's boosted to maximum output. Shields down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So this is part 5. I had that wrong in my notes, but this is part 5 of our discussion of The Force Awakens. You know, this is one of the favorite things that we do all year long, breaking down these movies into segments. And Ross, you've been here for the last several movies, and always appreciate your contributions. We had you scheduled for our discussion of the last novelization, but you had to demur because you were getting married at the time. So congratulations. We are glad you, as a newlywed, you could take some time out from your life and come join us again.
Yeah. And all of that happened over the course of, I proposed at the Oasis concert in Chicago, and it was an absolute surprise. So that was wonderful. So that was August. And then Monica's birthday is October 24th. I took the day off. She didn't. I didn't realize that. So I was just around. She finished up early and she's like, do you want to go get our marriage license? Yeah, okay, let's do it. And we both love Halloween. So on the drive home, we were just like, do you want to just do it on Halloween? And we did with 9 people there. So it was quick, fun, had a blast, and it was very us. So it was fantastic. Even if I did have to miss an episode and missed you too, but I thought you'd understand.
Absolutely.
Of course.
We did. I just remember that day I sent you a link and you're like, hey, I can make it if it's possible, but I'm getting married tomorrow. I was like, yeah, I think you need to concentrate on that. So, but of course, we've had so many great episodes with you on the show. So we're obviously willing to overlook that and have you back at some point. So thank you again for joining us. Let's get this discussion kicked off with our questions that we usually pose to our guests. Jay, you want to go ahead and get that started?
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, The Force Awakens is the first movie in the new Disney era. So, with that switch happening in our Star Wars verse, so to speak, Do you remember where you were when you heard that Disney was making new Star Wars movies, and like exactly where you were at the time physically, or where you were in your life, or do you remember anything about that?
So I have moved around a lot. And even with this movie, I have two different regions of the country from when the announcement occurred to when it actually came out. I was working for a marketing agency in Baltimore at the time.
Mhm.
So that's where I found out during the day because my job typically involves some nature of social media. So I'm always getting updates or looking for things and saw it and didn't know if any of my coworkers were big Star Wars fans and stuff. So I think I'm texting like my best friend from since 3rd grade who I went to all the midnight showings with and everything like that. It was just like, "Oh my god, did you hear this news that's happening?" Um, I was in grad school at the University of Baltimore at the time, and I had an hour-long commute, uh, from where I worked to live, and I think I just listened to the radio to get every update I could, uh, as the news was coming out, like, "Hey, this is happening now. This is happening now." And my mind was in 40 different places because of everything going on. It's obviously football season as well. Um, so pulled in a lot of different directions, but it became one of those things of, "Oh my god, where can I get more information about this? I can't believe this is happening."
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what's fun about that is now you're talking about that, it occurs to me the Star Wars podcast sphere was not what it is now at that time. And so, I mean, I've told this story before, so our listeners will probably hear it. I mean, I was at work and I was just looking at the force.net and they had the thing there. And at first I thought it was a joke. I was like, what, okay, fine. But it was like a couple of years later when I started getting into podcasts and was following the development of this movie that it really, really sank in. But yeah, at that time it was like we didn't quite have the community on, you had websites that had those old discuss boards and whatever that you could go to if you wanted, but you just didn't get you didn't have the Facebook community, you didn't have the Twitter community, you didn't have the dozens and dozens of Star Wars podcasts at the time to really celebrate all this with. And so it was a little bit more isolationist then. And then
Yeah.
in the lead up to The Force Awakens, it was like the community exploded all over the place with, more websites and more podcasts and more discussion on Facebook and the like. So yeah, it was a very, very, very different time.
Mhm.
Okay, question number 2. So one of the things we've been talking a lot about on this show is that I've pointed out that one of my favorite things about The Force Awakens in that time is as the community I was just talking about, but also all the hype that came with it and the rumors and the speculation that would swirl around. Did you have a favorite theory or a bit of hype about The Force Awakens that came up prior to the movie's release?
I don't think so. I think I try to, and I'm very Dan Zare in this way. I like to just kind of let it come at me.
Sure.
Where it is, okay, what's that like? The most excited I would get about things, and this is much later down the line, like, once the Vanity Fair cover an article hits,
Mhm.
that's when it's real to me. That is just like Annie Leibovitz got them, here's the official photos, this and that. I think I was trying to avoid things more than anything else. Um, just again, because I wanna let the story be the story. Uh, these people worked hard to get their opportunities, so I don't expect them to listen to what I say somewhere else. So they're telling their story. That also doesn't mean I agree with everything that I have seen in the films and things, but that's their right that they earned to do. So as a consumer, I'm going to try to appreciate that art and hope it falls into that arc of what I love.
I like that. That's a great way to look at it, quite honestly.
Yeah, and there are just I mean, there are so many different ways that things can go, and, after the prequel trilogy, it was like, "Oh, here we go again. What is this one going to be now?"
Mhm.
And you get a different flavor, like, you're in the same ice cream store, but you're getting 3 new flavors that you don't know anything about yet.
Yeah.
Love that.
Something I was thinking about earlier today, and just to pull back the curtain, we are recording this episode well over a week before it's going to come out. But I was walking my dogs and I was listening to a podcast that doesn't actually have much to do with Star Wars at all. And the whole subject of the Mandalorian and Grogu came up, and they were just kind of talking about how the projections for its opening weekend make it looks like it's going to be one of the box office wise, it's not going to do as nearly as well as anything else that's come out with Star Wars in the last 10, 15 years. And a point they made was that the thing about this movie is that it's the Mandalorian and Grogu, who we just saw not that long ago on television. We've had 3 seasons and we've seen them a lot. Whereas the difference was when the sequel trilogy was coming out, and it's like, what did happen to Han? What did happen to Leia and Luke and the droids and all of our favorite characters that, sure, we had the books and things like that, but they told us that wasn't going to count anymore. And so I think for me, it was just fun kind of doing that, anticipating as the images and the trailers came out and seeing, as we've talked about on prior installments of this series, when we finally got that trailer from Celebration and Han comes on the screen, Chewie, we're home. And just, it's like, oh my gosh, our heroes are back. The people we grew up with are back. And so I think that's just kind of it's a difference. I mean, I'm still excited for the Mandalorian and Grogu, but it's like, I haven't had as much time to miss them. And I think the other thing that's happened is that as we've drifted into a streaming world compared to when you had to wait forever for those movies to come out on VHS and then to come out on Blu-ray, DVD and Blu-ray and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Mandalorian and Grogu has always been available. It was available for 8 weeks in a row over the course of 3 different years. So it's just so anyways, that's just a bit of a difference. I, as I've often said, I'm almost more excited for Starfighter simply because it's uncharted territory with new characters, and there's so much more unknown. It's for us to explore when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's my perspective on it. But anyways, Jay, next question.
No, I think you make a lot of really great points there, Dennis, for sure. All right, Ross, we've got one more memory lane type question for you. So tell us about your first viewing of The Force Awakens. What do you remember?
Yeah, so I started this conversation in Baltimore, and then when this movie came out, I lived in St. Paul, Minnesota. Did not know many people. I basically knew coworkers and had like 1 or 2 friends because I was working for the Minnesota Wild, and working a hockey season is pretty demanding in and of itself, and you don't get to meet a lot of people. But went with my friend Jess, and it was a 5 p.m. show, December 18th in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. And the 501st was there. I remember a great Crimson Guard being there, a couple other things where it was just like, I kind of get into game face mode of just like, no, I'm going to go, I'm a fan, but I'm going to go take this very seriously. So I appreciate the fanfare, but I want it there just for a second. And then I want to go sit down and have everyone shut up so that I can go soak it in. And that was able to happen. And it was a beautiful film. Like that, J.J. Abrams, if he does anything, he creates beautiful cinematography in his storytelling. And I think Monica and I rewatching this film over the weekend, it just jumps out again of just like the contrast of colors, how sharp everything is, the angles that you get. And I think that's what resonated with me the most. And it's funny because I think even as I'm talking about this right now, it makes me think of how strong the final 2 episodes of Maul was for the animated series, and kind of those same visuals. And that just like, it just pulls you in a little bit more. There's that grittiness to the beauty, and that kind of grabs you. So that's what I remember. I remember loving it. I remember being excited about like, okay, what new toys are out? What is available now versus what'll be later? knowing that Christmas is right around the corner.
Oh yeah.
It was Star Wars is always an event, at least to me, and it usually is to anyone who's going to these things. So it was memorable, but it was a different place, and just being like, oh yeah, I saw that first. I'm curious how many states I have watched a first movie or a first viewing of a Star Wars movie in at this point.
Ooh, I
So
love that.
I may have to research that, but it makes it a little bit different.
That would be really fun if you still had all the ticket stubs and then you had a map of the United States and just glued them on the cities on the map and displayed it in your office or something like that, or something like that. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
I think it was Rebel Base Card I was listening to the other day, and they were talking about how with the actually it's either Rebel Base Card or Coffee with Kenobi, because they did a crossover over the course of the last week, and they were talking about how we've kind of been robbed of the ticket stub souvenir that
Yes.
because everything is now on your phone, and when
Mhm.
you've seen the movie, it's gone, or even if it's not, it's still on your phone. It's not like you're printing it out or anything like that. But um, I have a much easier time answering that question. I've either seen all the Star Wars movies for the first time in Missouri or Texas, and so that's all there is to it for me. How about
There
you,
you go.
Jay? All Ohio?
Oh yeah, all Ohio for sure.
Okay.
I can't say that about actually Twilight movies though. I saw a premiere of one of the Twilight movies in Tennessee. So
Oh, okay. Across the border. So two
yeah.
borders at that point. So okay. Question number 4. Who was your favorite character from The Force Awakens?
Rey, from the
Okay.
moment that she showed up with those goggles on, and it was just that mystery. Like it was, oh, here's the good guy behind the mask.
Mhm.
Um, so seeing how resourceful she had to be, but then just learning she had her edge to her and protectiveness of her as a scavenger, but then taking care of BB-8 and doing the right thing as well. So the introduction you get of her transcends into everything that you experience with her throughout all the films.
Mhm. I think that's great. Yep. And it's so hard to pick. I don't you did a great job of being like, Ray. For me, I waver on that. And I think when I first saw the movie, it was definitely BB-8, but then after that, it's kind of gone back and forth. So I just think that's awesome that you had a very solid answer and it hasn't wavered.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Daisy Ridley's incredible, and
Mhm.
what she did with everything, and I think how she was written as well. She was, I want to say, the most stable character.
Mm.
Everyone else just kind of wavers here and there, and they forced her into her moments, like with the dark Ray and stuff like that. But she was the only one on there where I don't think I ever questioned who she was going to be and what she was going to do.
Mhm.
And I think they left that open for other characters. And not that
Mhm.
that's a bad thing, but I loved her being her.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I think that's a great interpretation. So then what is your favorite scene from The Force Awakens? And is it the same thing, as you said with Rey, she was your standout from the very beginning. Did you have a favorite scene originally and has it changed, or where do you land on that?
I will say that first, the most excited I was the opening crawl.
Ah, yeah.
As soon as that comes
Mhm.
in for any of the films, like, that is just like, you know what? Forget anything else in the world exists. This is Star Wars time, and you get this. So if I had to pick a favorite point, that would be it at the intro. But I really do think it is her kind of being in that AT-AT and going around and, "Hey, here," or in the Star Destroyer, scavenging and showing like, "Oh, okay, this person has a little bit of power already," and it wasn't watered down by other people being around. This film has a lot of characters all happening at once, so I loved seeing her on a desert in this solitudinal place as she has been an abandoned child. It is a beautiful way to introduce a character and kind of a positive trope of what we can expect from her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
No, I think that's well said, because you're right. And she does it with such positivity too. Even though she's counting down the days, she still goes out and she puts on her little helmet and she kind of looks around the desert, and she's just happy to be eating her green bread and doing her thing. And so, yeah, that moment of her individuality, I think is great. And I have to ask, did you have the experience in the theater during the premiere where you mentioned the crawl coming on? Did everyone erupt in applause, or was it pretty subdued at your viewing?
Oh, it was applause.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was
Okay.
everyone's bursting. It is just,
Yep.
oh, we are finally here. And
Yep.
that's the great Star Wars community that we have. That isn't
Mhm.
a bot hiding somewhere waiting to say something, or someone just trying to stir up trouble. This is, hey, we all went out of our way to get tickets for this event to come here, and we're going to celebrate it as an extended family, kind of how George Lucas imagined it.
Yes, well said. And the reason that I asked that is because, as you said, it just illustrates how far reaching the community goes and how important this release was at the time. Because, I mean, think about it. On that day, or at least the first viewing of any theater, most likely, those fans that are there were most likely erupting in that applause. And that just gives me the chills to think about that. So many of us were having that same type of joy at the same time, or at least relatively at the same time.
Yeah, it is a, even if it's not the exact same time,
Right.
it's the movement of the moment.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, you said it wonderfully, and I love how that brings it all together. But that's why we talk about celebration. That's why it's just like,
Mhm.
oh, it was it really 5 years ago that we all got together?
Yeah.
Um, but then it makes me think, I was fortunate enough to go to Japan last year for it. I got to hang out with Mark Newbold and all the guys from Fantha Tracks, and meet Matt Hudson from Star Wars Sessions, and hang out with a couple people. Stax Rebo, who does some of the best cosplay that you'll see. Um, and she's in California, so we'll get to see her out there. She does the Max Rebo
Mhm.
uh, one, as well as numerous others that she has right now. But getting to see that group, like, I have my European friends where it's just like, oh, now I get to see you guys in April too, but I've seen them more recently than I've seen you two, which is crazy to me.
Indeed, indeed.
Mm.
All right. Well, let's get into this segment. It picks up at 49 minutes and 20 seconds and runs to 59 minutes and 45 seconds. And we start at Star Killer Base. I guess this is our first shot of the base, and it's, a gigantic planet that's got the equatorial area harvested away, and we've now got that giant focusing lens in the middle of it. TIE fighters fly by. All right. Here's one of the things I kind of have an issue with the way movies are marketed, is that Star Killer Base was not a secret going into the movie. I mean, we all knew. So that being said, what was your reaction to seeing this for the first time in the movie? And we'll start with you, Ross.
Um, yeah, bigger than the Death Star.
Mhm.
I think they end up talking about that during the film as well. It became one of those things where just like, okay, this is kind of the same premise. Um, but I try to let that go and just kind of, what new elements are going to be brought in because of this. And they were. It was just, I think it was just a matter of the stakes are higher because of what this is now, because they had the resources to make something bigger. So that was kind of it. I wasn't like, oh my God, Star Killer Base. It was just like, oh, here's the big Death Star.
Mhm. Mhm. And I have to ask you guys too. I didn't know that this was Ilum until after the fact. And I don't even know how we came upon that piece of information. But I've often wondered since then, do you think that there was a specific reason that Ilum was chosen to be turned into Starkiller Base? Because as we know, Ilum was the home of finding lightsaber crystals forever by the Jedi. So do you think if Kylo Ren had anything to do with the choice of planet to use, do you think it was specifically to, stick it to the Jedi, so to speak, in that way? Or is it kind of random? Is there a strategic reason why this planet was chosen? It's just something that I never really thought about until actually watching it this time. Like, why did they choose Ilum out of all the planets?
I think the answer to that question is suggested by Rogue One, in which they needed kyber crystals to make the focusing laser for the Death Star. And if Starkiller Base is the next evolution of the Death Star, then you need kyber crystals. And what better
Makes
place to get them
sense.
from the planet where they primarily come from, which is Ilum. And so I think it's a bonus that you can stick it to the legacy of the Jedi by taking away a planet that means something to them. But I don't think it is a, oh, we need a random planet. I think it is much more of a, you need kyber crystals in order to create this type of effect. And as Chirrut Imwe would say, the strongest stars have hearts of kyber. Well, Ilum's not a star, it's a planet, but at the same time, it clearly has an abundance of kyber on it.
Yeah, that
And
totally
probably
makes sense.
some nature of kyber core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even so I'm thinking of Red Rocks and the natural sound that you get there from a concert. Sometimes you get these benefits of being in a specific place. So and Palpatine, this was probably all part of his plan the entire time of just like, and Jay, that may lend some credence to what you're saying. Palpatine may have had it as symbolic, but also, hey, this makes the most sense. We don't have to worry about fishing kyber out of other places. If it's here, we just have to move it on the planet instead of moving it all around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
And it's
makes
a
total
secluded
sense.
planet on top of that. It's not like anybody else is there. You don't have to worry about, the First Order at this point is not the organization that will come to take over the galaxy after they destroy the Republic in this movie, which is scenes later. But you can develop this in relative secrecy. No one knew about Starkiller Base yet at this point. So I think that has something to do with it as well.
Well, thank you guys.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay. So right after that, we see Kylo Ren and Hux talking to Snoke. So we get another introduction. First we got Starkiller Base, and now we got Snoke. And he appears as like a 3-story tall hologram.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about this? I mean, I was watching that today and I'm like, ego much, Snoke? I mean, what are we doing here? You don't need to be that huge and have your underlings looking up to you that way in order to have this conference here. They're talking about they're trying to track down Luke Skywalker, how important it is that they find this droid, that if he gets the resistance, then they could get Luke, and that could bring back a whole new organization of Jedi, and that's going to be a problem. But we'll come to find out in The Last Jedi that Snoke is actually pretty tall, but not this big. But
Right.
what's your take on that, Ross?
I mean, I think it's kind of introducing the audience to the big bad guy, like pun intended. Here's the face of evil right now. Here's who you need to deal with. I don't know that I thought he was massive by any stretch. So I think it was just kind of like, it's interesting that this is so big. But I think, again, kind of like with getting introduced to Rey, getting introduced to Kylo, who are these? They're all behind masks. This is a hologram of a different size. You're put on uneven footing for so many characters, and he's another one of them.
Oh yeah. And the whole thing is too, it's almost like the presence of, the Wizard of Oz kind of thing, where you have this larger than life sort of instance here that is meant to be intimidating. And I think that that's what the audience was, because you could see definitely, I mean, Hux is really straining his neck just to look up at Snoke. So it's got to be an intimidation factor for sure.
Right. So I don't intend to give this part of the discussion short shrift, but I think there's other things I want to spend more time on here in this episode. But Hux is arguing to use the weapon, and so Snoke approves the plan. That they're going to destroy the Republic, and the Resistance is going to be vulnerable after that. So, okay, there's that. But then Hux leaves to go make those preparations, and we've got this conversation between Snoke and Kylo. And Snoke says, "There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?" Which is, we all heard a bunch of times from the trailer there, or the teaser that came out well over a year in advance of all this. And hairs stand up on the back of your neck, especially when you think back to that teaser and the score that John Williams wrote just for a teaser. I mean, music that didn't even show up in the movie, but he wrote something for the teaser. But at any rate, he then goes on to say, "There's something more. The droid we seek is aboard the Millennium Falcon in the hands of your father, Han Solo." So that's the big reveal as to who Kylo Ren actually is. What do you think about that way of revealing that? Jay, I'll go with you this time on that. I mean, I'll just let it out in advance. To me, it didn't quite have the gravitas of a twist and a surprise that say, "Luke, Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. You killed him. No, I am your father." It just kind of lacked a little bit of that drama there, but that's just me. What do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with you. It was almost like a second-handed conversational, "Oh yes, it's in the hands of your father." There was this pause, but when he just came out with it, then you're like, "Oh, okay, well, there it is. There's no suspense here. So I guess this is not going to be the biggest reveal that we're going to get in this movie," is the way that I felt about it. If they were dropping this one so casually, I thought, well, gosh, what bigger things do we have coming up if this is the casual drop that they're giving us here?
Right. How about you, Russ?
Yeah, I'm on board with both of you there, and it equates to what we get 2 years later in Solo, and that's something that Bob Iger made a big deal about, like, "Oh, we'll even learn where Han Solo gets his name," and it just like they try to sneak these little pieces in, and it's just like, it's not as cool as you think it is, or effective. And I think it's kind of a turnoff at times. It's fine that it came out like it did, but it was too explanatory. It wasn't as natural. It was like, "Oh, we need to educate the audience on this now." And it's just like, I don't know. There are audiences that need that. I know that the three of us don't. So we're in a different place. Most of the people that we talk to don't need that. Maybe because it's coming back first, it's trying to serve more audiences. So I understand why they would do it. I don't think it hit as well, at least with established fans.
And I think for me too, I don't know about you guys, and this is way jumping ahead, but the bigger impact for me was when Han called Kylo Ren Ben. And I just stopped and was like, "Wait, whoa." I mean, I know that they said that Expanded Universe was gone, but we know Ben as Ben Skywalker. So what is going on here? And that was Luke and Mara Jade's son. So for me, that was the bigger shaking of the tree than even this was in this moment.
Yeah, Lawrence Kasdan had a big part in writing the script, and of course he also wrote The Empire Strikes Back and gave us that big twist, the reveal with Vader telling Luke that he's his father here. And so I can't help but wonder if the demands of the script, which is that you're going to have Han and Leia, who've been estranged all this time later, getting back together, and Han breaks the news like, "I saw him, I saw her son," and this, that, and the other. But that scene you just referenced, Jay, I can't help but wonder that would have been the better place to reveal, to make the twist in that moment
100%.
when everything is on the line. They're on that bridge, and this is an opportunity to reel him in, for him to pull off that, it's like, son, and have for Han to say, Ben, and then all of us go, "What? How did he know his name? That's Kylo Ren." And then have him come, son, that's what he wants you to think. You're stronger. I think it would have been much more of a jaw-dropping moment in that context if they had gone it that way.
Yeah,
But
I
hey,
agree. And
Agreed.
yeah, and I don't know about you, Ross, too, but I think maybe the whole reason why they did it this way is to build that emotional tension because, of course, we know Kylo has this emotional struggle with coming to terms with his father being, Han Solo. I mean, he not coming to terms with, but just the fact that he says he means nothing to him. And so that it's setting this whole thing up for something bigger later on. Would you agree?
Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, the family drama that
Right.
gets introduced through this, that gets introduced through the Kylo Ren miniseries comic,
Yeah.
they've tried to fill in the blanks on so many things. I think this was also I think it also could get lost or did get lost in the fact that we're all trying to figure out who the heck Snoke is.
mhm.
Like,
Right.
who is this to the Emperor? Who is this to the First Order versus the Empire versus so it's kind of like why does this guy know these things and is saying these things? And it again, it's kind of that unevenness that can build tension, but if you're thinking too much during the film, you lose what's right in front of you as well.
Mhm.
See, that's one of the things about going into this movie. It's like, who's Rey? Who's Kylo Ren? Who's Snoke? We had all these
Right.
questions because we knew something about these various characters. Just going back to that first teaser that we were talking about a second ago, what was our first image of Kylo Ren? We saw him from behind, stalking through a forest, and all of a sudden he strikes that dramatic pose and shoves his lightsaber out the side. It ignites, and we get the saber with the two exhaust little sabers on it, and it's like, whoa, there's that. And there was all this. We had all heard about Rey, and we were speculating about her. Then we get Snoke, and it's just like another person to wonder where did this supreme leader come from in this situation. So now we just got mystery upon mystery, and then they answer one of these questions just so casually, and then don't answer the other two questions in this movie, which is who's Snoke and who's Rey at the end of
Mhm.
this. So, okay, one of the things that stood out to me when I was rewatching this is Snoke says, "Even you, Master of the Knights of Ren, have never faced such a test." What test? What are we talking about here? What does that mean to you, Ross?
I think that's the same as Yoda telling Luke not to go into the cave. This is and then not to go to Endor. This is, hey, you have to face your dad and your family. I don't think you're ready for this.
What do you think,
Mhm.
Jay?
Yeah, I just think it was setting up again just the whole idea of, ooh, okay, the Knights of Ren, who are they? And why is this such a test? And why is Kylo Ren, the only one that has ever faced such a thing like this? So, it's just planting those seeds of, especially at the time, of all of this new lore and all of this new material that we knew was going to end up getting explained later at some point, or maybe not. So, it's just that little breadcrumb dropping, I guess, more so than anything else. But what do you think, Dennis?
Okay, so I don't mean to be overly critical. The Force Awakens is my favorite of the sequel trilogy movies by a long shot. I liked all three of them. I am not as down as some people are on them. This scene, though, just comes off incredibly clunky to me. And the thing is just that it's the way that they drop off, it's on board the Millennium Falcon, with your father, Han Solo. It's okay, really spelling it out for you there. And I get it. This script was probably really, really huge at some point, and they had to whittle things down and streamline it as much as they can. And so some things get sacrificed in that case. And for all the praise that we heap on J.J. Abrams for his ability to put together cinematic scenes, this was a weakness of this film here. And so they're teasing that there's going to be some sort of a test. And I think those of us that are this is going to sound incredibly snobby, and I don't mean to come off that way. For those of us that are as this level of fandom, we've studied these films, we've read countless books, and we watch all these movies multiple times a year. I mean, we lose count of how many times we've seen this stuff. we can think back and call those things. And so, they have to engage in all this exposition to kind of set things up. But even this, I think, is just a clunky way of going about trying to foreshadow something that might happen later in the movie, which is that Master of the Knights Run, okay, what are those? To your point, Jay, okay, that we haven't heard of them before, but they don't show up in the movie other than in a vision that Rey has when she picks up the Skywalker lightsaber here later.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it's dismissed, right? We never see them again in this movie. We have to wait 2 more years before there's even a possibility of them coming up after this. And so, at any rate, it's just I don't want to overstate it. It doesn't bother me that much in the long run over the course of watching this movie. But again, the point of doing these segments is we are focusing on this movie on a minute by minute basis. And for my money, this could have been done better. They could have distributed some of this information in a better way. Had the Knights of Ren follow Kylo up to this chamber and then have him wait here, whatever, have them be a presence in this movie so that we see that there's something around, have them show up on Starkiller Base later and in some capacity, chasing Han and Finn and stuff around, so that we know there's something to these guys here. But there's a lot of stuff that kind of happens here that, yeah, it does show up again later, but I just don't know that it gives the gravitas to that. So anyways, there's my rant about this scene.
Well, and what I would add there, Dennis, and I think all three of us as music fans and people who enjoy going to concerts, saying the Millennium Falcon, saying Han Solo, this almost felt like the band saying that you're in that city.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Indianapolis, we love you. Hey, Cleveland, we love. Oh, that's where we are.
Yeah.
That's a great comparison. Oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that until Dennis was going through it, and I was just like, oh yeah, here are all those pieces to have you look at the person next to you and be like, oh yeah, that's us.
Yeah. No, that's I think the perfect way to put it, Ross. And so again, it's a necessary scene because of the way the movie ultimately plays out, but I feel like a lot of these elements could have been distributed across the movie and it would have been more impactful. So, all right. Well, we're barely into the segment, so let's move on to the next part. Okay. So now yeah, this always happens. It's just the way it goes. So awesome. We are arriving at Takodana. We see the Millennium Falcon traveling through hyperspace. It's starting to malfunction, but Rey has solutions. And meanwhile, Finn is in the back, struggling with Chewbacca, trying to bandage his wound. Chewie roars and scares BB-8 off, and kind of like the mouse droid from A New Hope. And then Han's yelling back there, "You hurt Chewie, you're going to deal with me." And hurt him. He almost killed me 6 times. And then Chewbacca starts to struggle, which is fine. And then Rey figures it out. She bypasses the compressor, and then Han just has that moment. It's like, wow, she's good. And he's almost jealous in that moment that she came up with the solution that he did not. Before I turn it over to give you guys for your comments, because there's more parts of this scene, but I broke it up for the sake of discussion. For all the criticism I had of just what happened in the scene prior with Snoke, this is so much better with the way they convey that Rey's got skills without saying, I've been on Jakku and I've been tinkering around with salvage and I figured out how to build things while working for Uncle. They show, they don't tell in this situation, which I think makes a huge, huge difference. And on top of that, and we're going to see it again and again in the next parts of this scene, Harrison Ford owns the room with his ability act. Finn playing off of Chewbacca about, trying to struggle with him to heal, world-class acting, and even Daisy Ridley selling Rey with just being so confident in what she can do and being so proud and coming up with the solutions tells us volumes about these characters here. But your all's reactions.
Oh, I was just sitting here just thinking to myself how wonderfully classic but yet modern this scene is for Star Wars, because you have all of those elements, as you were just saying, Dennis, of the Millennium Falcon, Han Solo and Chewie, just as you said, just owning the scene, owning the room, just giving you those old time feel type vibes. And then you've got these newer characters that are blending seamlessly with them. And you're absolutely right. The fact that Rey is just able to be like, I bypassed the compressor. And she's just so proud. And Han just looks at her like, huh, okay. I think there is a little bit of envy there that he has, because obviously Rey has had time with the Millennium Falcon on Jakku that he didn't have. And so it's almost like when your kid goes off to college or when they've been away for a while and someone brings up an anecdote about them that you weren't there to experience with them. And then you're just like, oh, okay. Wow, that was great. Kind of thing. But Ross, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. What I love is that we've gone from, they're getting to see the map. They're getting to see Han explaining about the Jedi, about, hey, it's all true. And the Force Awakens, I think that's perfect for Han Solo to be the one explaining to people and using the term mumbo jumbo. I thought it was all mumbo jumbo. It's real. And that kind of puts that endorsement, I think, into this story. But then it takes you from, you're Han Solo, to, oh, I just bypassed the compressor. And she went from super fan into gearhead, relatable gearhead for him. It so naturally, kind of as you mentioned, Jay, it was just, here's this seamlessness of, we get each other. And this is how it works. Like, we know you're a war hero. We know that you've been, oh my God, we're on the Millennium Falcon. But then she's ripping pieces out of it to make it run better.
Yes. Which
and
in
that,
and of itself for Han had to be like, what's going on here?
right? But it's that confidence. It's a little bit of naivety as well, but in the best manner possible. And that's what endears this, haggard old smuggler into being like, oh yeah, I kind of like her being around things. So I love that evolution and how quickly, and Dennis, I think you said it perfectly, comparing to the previous scene to this, they were almost opposites in terms of a successful delivery.
Yeah, I think this scene also benefits from the fact that there's only one character in the room. Well, I guess there's also a droid, but Chewbacca's the only one wearing a mask. I mean, where you've got Snoke, which is a digital creation, and you've got Kylo Ren wearing a mask, whatever, but you really get to see the expression on everyone's faces. And even Chewbacca has got expressions compared to, Kylo Ren in this situation. But picking it up here, we get the Dejarik table. You kind of see Han like starting to buy in to the mission after his initial reluctance when he first pulled the Falcon onto Eravana. Han thanks Finn for helping out Chewbacca, and then Finn accidentally activates the table, and Chewie props himself up on a notice and kind of gets all interested because it's been years since he's seen that, and he used to play games there all the time. And then Han comes back and says, "Oh, so fugitives, huh?" And you just see that twinkle in his eye that he's kind of come around to all of this. And that's when, as you were alluding to a second ago, Ross, they start talking about the map. And Rey says, Finn is with the Resistance. And this time, for the first time ever, I don't know how many dozens of times I've seen this movie, I caught the look on Han's face when Rey says that. And even before the next time Han and Finn are talking to each other one-on-one, Han's like, yeah, honey, you don't know. he's not with the Resistance. But to Han's credit, he doesn't call Finn out right then and there because he respects the game. Finn is just like Han has been so many, but just moments ago in this movie where he's on the Nirvana saying, he says, I'll talk my way out of it. I always do. And, even though Chewbacca's kind of like, it's like, I always do. And so, so you get that moment there, and then we get to see the display of the map there. So before we get into Han's discussion about Luke, what stands out to you here about this part of the exchange, Ross?
I think it's, and I jumped the shark a little bit earlier, obviously.
That's all right.
With this, but the majesty and the magic of it to him, and thinking back to a different day than through what he's been through as a parent, as someone who is parts of the galaxy away from his wife at this point, and it brings that magic back, especially as the map is in that 3D form and kind of embracing all of them, like they're in the map. And I think that goes back to what J.J. Abrams does so well. Like, that's such a beautifully choreographed shot of him getting into the depth of things and the human emotion while having this digital map of, here's how I can go find my buddy again, and maybe we can make all of this right. So that's where it takes me. I really enjoy that aspect, and as you mentioned, Harrison Ford's acting earlier, that's where it's really coming to light.
I would agree. And the whole thing with the guitar table too, I feel like the big part of that is that this movie does such a great job of just dropping those nostalgic moments for us in all of the right places. So, and it seems like it's Finn that does it a lot of times, because he was the one that pulled out the training droid earlier, and then now he's the one that turns on the Jajark table. And so he's kind of accidentally bumping into all of these things that mean something to all of these other characters, while kind of under this facade of being, I'm with the resistance kind of thing. So, it's kind of a fun little twisted way to get him into their history, so to speak. And to your point, Ross, too, and we'll talk more about the scene with the map and everything, but I don't know if it was the lighting or what it was, but every time, and the first time I even saw this movie, I noticed this, is that when Han starts talking about that former life, as you said, Ross, he almost looks younger. And maybe it's the blue light of the map or whatever, but it just seems like it erases so much of that age and that experience that has haggard him over time, and just brings him right back to what's important.
Yeah, that the wisdom of years is present there with Han at the same time that, and I credit Harrison Ford so much for this, just the way he's able to keep that wistful expression on his face while he's going through all of this makes a huge difference. But the question comes up, that Luke has disappeared. People have been looking for him. Why did he leave? And this is where I get back to the whole, I'm going to keep harping on this, so everyone's just going to have to tolerate that. But when Han says he was training a new generation of Jedi, one boy, an apprentice, turned against him, destroyed it all. He does not name Ben Solo. He does not name Kylo Ren, but he knows who it was in this moment. So once again, if they had given us that reveal later in the movie, after all of this stuff, I think we all would have gasped in that moment in this situation. But we talked about that. So, Han goes on to say, Luke felt responsible. He just walked away from everything. And then Finn asks, do you know what happened to him? And then Han's response is, a lot of rumors, stories. People that knew him best think he went looking for the first Jedi temple. And okay, stop there for a second. So we have the benefit of having seen The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker at this point. And we know that Luke went looking for the first Jedi temple. That's where he ended up. But it was not to necessarily bring back the Jedi, is because Luke tells Rey that it's time for the Jedi to end when we get to The Last Jedi. So why was it so necessary he went there? And this is just a pure speculation moment. I get that. And we were also dealing with the change of directors, change of writers, change of creative visions from one movie to another. But if you're trying to reconcile one movie to the next, what are your thoughts on that, Ross? Putting on the spot, sorry. But
yeah, no, but I mean, I think it is for one, no one else knows what he's thinking and what he's gone through. So that's it is conjecture by anyone else, even the people who think they know him the best. But even once you do get there, like that's the core of the Jedi religion. So regardless of what he's going to do, whether I'm going to build it up or burn it down, let's find where it started. That goes back to the symbolic nature of things, where that is the tree. That is where the sacred texts can be. All of those different elements there, where it's just like, if he's done with it and wants to burn it down, you go to ground zero and do it. So that it makes sense to me in that regard. Obviously, I think most of us wish he did not have that midlife crisis to take us down that path, but that's where the story went. So, and that's where the directors kind of played leapfrog and things. So it's I'm fine with it. I think Han gave as much as he could, and they tried to tease what could be coming, but he couldn't speak absolutely on it either.
Sure. Jay?
No, I think you're spot on, Ross. And again, if you're trying to tie together the threads of what we have in the movies, that makes the most sense. Is that you're going to, as you said, go to ground zero and you're going to eliminate anything after what was destroyed, because he kind of threw up his hands and said, well, then this needs to end right here, right now. I tried, I failed, and I'm not going to have this hubris kind of thing. And so that's the only thing that I think we can deduct from that. But I have to say, there's a little bit of a very Obi-Wan Kenobi-esque kind of feeling to this entire monologue, if you will, that Han is having at this point, because when he talks about this one boy, an apprentice, turned against him, destroyed it all, and people that knew him best think he went looking for the first Jedi temple, it's very reminiscent of Obi-Wan telling Luke about the Clone Wars and his father, and and kind of spinning a little bit of he was the best pilot in the galaxy, and he was a cunning warrior, and all of these things. It's kind of the same thing that Han is doing here, is spinning like from a certain point of view, almost kind of thing.
Yeah, Han, I think you just nailed that.
Yeah, he's occupying two parts in the hero's journey right here, in that Rey's answering the the call in this movie and being persuaded, but so is he, and he's also like the elder, the wiser, that's trying to sell her on the call at the same time. So because he doesn't want to get involved with the whole thing with the resistance and getting the droid back, but as the adventure picks up, he does as well. And Takodana, which we're going to talk about in just a second, Maz is the one that convinces him to answer the call as well. So we have a whole bunch of characters answering that call to action over the course of this movie. One last thing, just on the whole Luke disappearing to what we will later find out is Octo in The Last Jedi, is that I suspect J.J. Abrams intended that to be Avalon, intended this to be like the Odyssey, intended this to be going after the Golden Fleece. It tended to be all these different mythological things, that Luke was going there for a reason, to get something to overcome the fall of the Jedi and to rebuild the order, yada, 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 this, that, and the other. Rian Johnson loves to subvert our expectations. If you've watched enough of his movies, you know that's what he does. And so that's what he did. And so we end up with that disconnect. Depending on your feelings on The Last Jedi, you can decide if that's a good thing or not. That's a conversation for when we get to The Last Jedi. But in this moment, you do get that idea. It's that, Luke went on an adventure to find something that was needed in this situation after a disaster. And so that does make his decision in The Last Jedi all the more surprising when it said, because we all went to The Last Jedi expecting him to be, oh, you're here, Rey. Let's train and go take out the First Order, which is not the way that went at all. But the whole, in Jay, you alluded to this a little bit ago, when Rey asks, the Jedi were real? And then Han very wistfully says, I used to wonder about that myself. Thought it was a bunch of mumbo jumbo, and you said that too, Ross. A magical power holding together good and evil, the dark and light. Crazy thing is, it's true. The Force, the Jedi, all of it, it's all true. And yes, I am worshiping at the altar of Harrison Ford, but the way he delivered that, we saw it in the trailer, and then we got to see it here in the movie, and it was not diminished from having seen it prior in the trailer to coming here and seeing the movie. The way his lines are delivered here in the moment just shines. And I wish he'd gotten more recognition for his performance in this movie, because it might have been my favorite of all the Star Wars movies he pulled in. But, I'm saying that without having given a whole lot of thought. But at any rate, any last discussion about that before we get to Takodana? Y'all good? Okay.
Let's go see Maz.
All right. So they get to Takodana, and as they're coming in for landing on the planet, Han says to everyone, "You want my help? You're getting it. We're going to go see an old friend. She'll get your droid home." And then Rey is just staring at this planet in awe, and she says, "I didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy." And Han has a very, how to describe it, pained / sympathetic, empathetic expression on his face. In the moment, how did you take that? And we'll start with you, Jay.
I think he was just so, I don't know if he felt bad for Rey in the sense that he knew how sheltered she was, but I also think that there was a reverence to the innocence that she was showing in that moment, and that here he's been all over the galaxy, and he's been to every corner. He's seen so much, he's done so much, and yet here is the small kernel of like I said, like this naivete, this innocence that still exists in the galaxy. So I think part of that is just he's in awe at the fact that there's still people that appreciate things like that when they see them, if for nothing else.
Ross?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jay. It's that moment of he's almost like a grandfather figure more than a father figure to her, and it is almost like, oh, that's cute, but that's too bad you haven't seen this before. And there might be a little bit of, oh, I'm glad I'm getting to show you that. And that may lead into part of his decision and his offer that comes up shortly as well, is just like, I can show you more of this galaxy.
So I like both your answers. I think they come from the benefit of having seen the movie and seen the other two movies in the sequel trilogy. I can't help but think back to when I saw this movie for the first time, and we were going into it, as we were talking about earlier, we didn't know who Rey was. We didn't know who Finn was. These are people who did not have last names. And when we get all these reactions between Han and Rey leading up to this, him being impressed with her and being thoughtful when he sees her repairing things on the Falcon and asking questions about where they come from and this, that, and the other. And now he's giving this like almost pained expression. I don't think this anymore, obviously, because we know better. But at the time, that was one of the big questions coming to this movie is, who is Rey? And so it's like, and I feel like they were almost playing with us when they did this intentionally on this by giving Han those reactions to make you think, oh, maybe Rey is a Solo, or maybe Rey is a Skywalker or something in that case, because, he at times he asks questions in a way like he might already know the answers, and he's trying to ask in a way that, doesn't suggest that he does, but clearly they went with a different. I don't believe that she was always intended to be a Palpatine, which, as we find out in The Rise of Skywalker, but that's where we ended up. Okay, moving on. So Rey runs off the ship, and then Han and Finn get a moment, and he says, "Hey, Solo, I'm not sure who we're walking into here." And then, of course, Han's reaction is, "Do you just call me Solo?" And then, Finn's response is, "I'm a big deal in the Resistance," and he's concerned about the First Order. And then this is where Han, if you didn't know before, definitely drops it on Finn. Listen, big deal, you got another problem. Women always figure out the truth, which is such a great line coming from him. But I'm not sure there's a whole lot more to add to that, but either of you have an observation you want to share about it?
I think it's just a lighthearted moment, and the film does a lot of that, where it's just like, oh, hey, here's something a little bit more intense. Now we're gonna get a little bit lighthearted. Now we're gonna. This is where some of the joke came in, like,
Mhm.
and big deal becomes his nickname for a little while here.
Yeah.
So that's fun as well. So it's nice to see seeing the older, more established Han recognize things and take that step back to enlighten the kids in this film.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
love that. And just the fact that he's speaking from experience with Leia, and that obviously I think Rey reminds him of Leia maybe just a little bit as well. And so he's kind of, showing Finn that, well, you got your hands full here, buddy. So just so you know.
I think that's a great point, Jay. With and we're gonna find out. Okay, so I'll make this point after I talk about the next part. Rey's standing out there outside the Falcon, and Hen comes down and offers her a blaster, and she says, "I think I can handle myself." And then his response is, "I know you do. That's why I'm giving it to you." And then the whole, how to use that? Yeah, you point this and pull the trigger. It's like a little bit more complicated than that. And this is when he finally asks her name, which is Rey, and he offers her a job, and he's thinking about it because he and Chewie, they get along pretty well, but they need someone who can keep up with them. And, she's kind of excited by the prospect. And then she turns it down. She says she'd be flattered, but she has to get home. And he's like, back to Jakku? And, that's too bad. Chewie kind of likes you on all this. But yeah, Jay, I think she does remind him a bit of Leia. He's, for all the gruff that Han caught from fans after A New Hope especially over the last 15 or so years about, for lines like, if we could just avoid any more, female advice or whatever, it kind of came off as a bit of a chauvinist in that way. He actually likes that. He likes women who are assertive. He likes women that are aggressive, that, stick up for themselves, that can take care of themselves in this situation. And the fact that she was assertive on the Falcon with coming up as like, we need to do this, or, we need to prompt this. And, I bypass the compressor. And I think that was like magic, to him as far as he was speaking here. But again, the first time I saw this is like, oh, it's not just because she is the quote unquote damsel in distress from Jakku that needs a new home. I was thinking there might be more of a relationship that he's interested in finding out about. Is this possibly his long lost daughter, or is this Luke's daughter, or something like that? Again, in the moment, the first time or two I saw this, of course, we all know better now. But what else did you think, either of you think about this scene?
I didn't really have anything else to add, quite honestly. So yeah, I think that's the big part of it. Just other than just the fact that I think it's a lot for Han to offer anything to anybody, especially at this point, because it's obvious that he's been trying to do things, pardon the pun, solo, at least with, Chewie, if nothing else, because his other crews were obviously expendable because they were all pretty much gone by the time Finn and Rey found him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just a nice moment. Again, a humanizing moment for Han, showing how he has evolved or changed at this point. And, Rey's earning her place, and he's being a mentor. Even if he's not trying to be, he's being a mentor naturally. And that's a lot of what Star Wars is about as well.
Yeah. He's trying to disguise his vulnerability, I think, as well, which we saw he was very, very vulnerable in Solo, and it cost him with Kira, it cost him with Beckett in that movie and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the underrated parts of that movie that kind of explains his character going forward. And so when we see him in New Hope, he shows up in the cantina, points to himself, Han Solo, and, talks about how he's just in it for the money and this type of thing, when we all know from the get-go that he really does have a heart of gold. He just likes to come off with the gruff exterior and the like. So when Rey's all excited about, you're offering me a job, and he's like, I'm thinking about it. He just doesn't want it to be out there that, I've gone soft on anybody. And so he's disguising that vulnerability. So, okay. Maz Kanata's castle. So they walk up to the entrance, and he's explaining how they're going to get the droid on a clean ship, and says that it wasn't by luck that Han and Chewie found the Falcon, and so the First Order will be able to track them down as well. There's that bounty hunter droid at the entrance, which was just a, neat little bang in the background for this movie, but became a much bigger deal if you've played the Fallen Order and Survivor games. You run into those quite a bit. And then he points out that Maz is in a bit of an acquired taste, so he'll him do the talking, and whatever you don't stare. And great timing, both Finn and Rey say at what, and his response is any of it. So we get inside the castle, and we got Lin-Manuel Miranda playing Jabba Flow with J.J. Abrams on backing vocals as we pan around the interior of the castle, which is serving as a canteen. We get lots of new aliens. And then finally, the camera settles on Maz, portrayed by Lupita Nyong'o, who drops off some mugs at the bar, turns around, and yells, Han Solo. And then everyone freezes in their tracks. Han responds, oh boy, hey Maz. And then, she asks about, where's my boyfriend? And we find out that's Chewbacca. She likes that Wookiee. So, yeah, okay. I wish they'd just taken a little bit more of their time in this so we could have seen the aliens like the way they did in A New Hope. But Ross, what did you think about Maz's castle here and the denizens that resided inside?
This is the Star Wars that I love. This is that intrigue, that what's behind every nook and cranny here. He's trying to sneak in there, and Maz calling him out is just like, oh no. Now everyone is going to pay attention to what we're doing as we've got this secret mission that we need. And she just calls him out on it. And I think we all know those people as well, who their heart is 100% in the right place, but they're just like, oh no, I don't need to hide anything. I'm just going to put it all out there. Sometimes it's managing up, sometimes it's managing down, but there's definitely managing for it. But what a great introduction for her clientele, this 1,000-year-old bar and castle. I think it just adds to the history and takes us back. Like, I still want to know more about it to this day. Maybe that still becomes a thing, but I loved it. I thought the energy was great. I agree with you that it would have been nice if they could spend a little bit more time on it, but I didn't feel shortchanged as much as I would have liked more. I think it's probably the way that I would put it.
Yeah. Jay?
No, I would echo so many things that you just said, Ross, because it truly is what Star Wars brings you back, like you said, to the things like the cantina and just what Star Wars originally was, and the world building of walking up to the castle and seeing all those flags and wondering where did they come from and all of the stories that had to be behind that. And then when you walk in and you don't really get to see the aliens for too long, but yet you still appreciate the fact that you understand what they're trying to do with that. And the idea that, first of all, that Maz is working her own bar and that she's just, getting her hands dirty and she's doing the grunt work, even though she could probably have anyone and everyone around her employed to do those kinds of things for her, that she's so down to earth, but yet she doesn't even have to look at Han to know he's there. She senses him almost when she puts that tray of glasses down and then comes to that realization really quickly. And I love that. And so you just know that they've had that relationship over the years, and I love the fact that she says, what do you need? I'm sure you need something desperately. What is it? And she's just so down to earth. And I love the fact that she's talks about Chewie, like, where's my boyfriend? Just love it. Love everything about this scene. But what do you think, Dennis?
Well, it just Ross's reference to the fact that she's been around for 1,000 years operating this bar just made me realize, okay, so where did this castle come from? Did she take it over and then erect a statue of herself outside, or did she have it built from the ground up that way? And you can go either way, and it just kind of says something a little bit about her personality in that regard. But she's an underrated character in the sequel trilogy, I think. And she gets, a hollow scene in all of The Last Jedi. Would love to have seen more of her there. And then we get to see more of her working with the Resistance in The Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, give us more Maz Kanata somewhere. If you're, Disney Plus is out there, put her in some adventures, and they've done some stuff with her in the comics. There was a one where she's working with both Lando and Hondo Anaka as well, which was which was fantastic. And we've seen some of the background with her and Chewbacca and why she's so fond of him. But give us more. She's a fantastic character. I mean, that would have been a character that they could have dropped into Galaxy's Edge that I think would have made a lot of sense. I know the Disneyland version is kind of taking a step back in time for a big chunk of their of that property, but that would have been a fun character to interact with. I think that could have been something fun for them to do. But okay. So right after that, we get Bazine Natel sitting with Grumgar, and then she hops off his lap to go report to the First Order that the droid is there. And then there is a droid hanging out that also talks to someone about sending a message to the Resistance, because so we now have got the First Order and the Resistance realizing that BB-8 is on Takodana. And then the final scene of this segment of the movie is back on Starkiller Base, and we've got Kylo Ren by himself doing a little bit of a soliloquy, and he's saying, forgive me, I feel it again, the pull to the light, Supreme Leader senses it, show me again the power of darkness, and I will let nothing stand in our way. Show me, grandfather, and I will finish what you started. And then, of course, we get the reveal of Vader's melted mask. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm just going to go back to what I said earlier. You could have done this scene without saying the grandfather part. But even if you did, this would have been a better part to do the reveal of Kylo Ren's lineage than the way they did it a bit ago. And of course, we saw this mask in the trailer. So it's not like when we got to the movie, this was like a big surprise moment. I mean, it elicited plenty of oohs and ahs and gasps when we all got to see it for the first time. But for me, the best part of this is Kylo Ren demonstrating the conflict, which I think adds something to what this whole test is that Snoke was telling him or talking to him about earlier in the segment, which is, no one has ever gone through a test like this. But as opposed to Anakin, who was on the light side feeling the call of the dark, we've now got Kylo on the dark side feeling the call of the light. But anyway, I'm not sure I left a whole lot there to discuss, but Ross, what did you think about this brief segment?
Yeah, I mean, just seeing that, and you mentioned that we did see it in trailers and footage ahead of time, but seeing that iconic mask melted, knowing that came from the fire on Endor, there's something powerful to that in the history and the lineage, and it's Vader. It is the best bad guy in anything ever, and someone looking up to it. So people look up to different things, and I think it shows the tortured soul that Ben/Kylo is, as he's still trying to figure out, who am I actually going to be? Because he's trying to convince himself that he's Kylo because he's done the things to become that. But it doesn't come easy. And it is wave after wave that we know that he encounters through this. And at the end of the day, like, this is just an idol sitting in this charred briquette kind of little area, and he's much more than that. But it's a great introduction to who he is and what he's struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you both said there. As far as, Dennis, you said the conflict, and then Ross, you said all of the things that the tortured soul that he's going through. And I want to put a pin in that for just a second, but I want to go back really quickly to why the heck did they bring BB-8 into the castle with them? They all knew that the First Order was looking for him. And here is like a pirate castle of all of these vagrants from across the entire galaxy that are probably looking to make a buck and probably knew, had heard something about this. So that always, maybe not the first time around, but since then kind of made me wonder about that. And then the other thing with Kylo Ren is I understand that for him, the idea of Darth Vader is something that he looks up to in a way that he, as turning to that darker side of himself, idolizes. However, didn't anyone give him the lesson on his grandfather that he went back to the light? And so, did any of us ever think that maybe his pull to the light is actually Anakin, not Vader, having this effect on him? And even though Kylo Ren is reaching out towards the darkness, it's the light that's reaching back.
Yeah, and that's that balance, right? That is
Yeah.
that perpetual light versus dark, and no better person to exemplify that than Anakin and Vader.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I think what interferes with all this is that there was a conflict in Ben when he was young, and Palpatine acting through Snoke took advantage of that, and so he could cast doubt on anything that Luke or anyone else wanted to tell him about Anakin in that regard. And so he's buying into the story, which is, I'm going to finish what you started, which is eliminating the Jedi in that situation. So Luke could have told him the grand tale of Anakin being the chosen one and defeating the Sith, but once there was this, we see it in the vision that comes later in this movie. We see it again in The Last Jedi, the different viewpoints of what actually happened there and why there is this rift between Luke and Ben. Well, as far as Ben's concerned, Luke tried to kill him and Snoke took him in. So who are you going to trust? I think is the answer to that one. But yeah,
makes sense.
But that's the segment. That brings us to 10 minutes, and I love doing these episodes. It's so much fun to go through these things on a moment-by-moment basis because we can talk about the movie, but when you put it into an hour, and I know I say this a lot, but just getting an opportunity to dive into some of the details and ponder what everyone was thinking, even whether we do it from an in-story perspective, from a perspective of what it takes to make a movie, from a writing perspective like that. There's just so much to consider on these, and so I love that we get guests such as Ross to come and help us out with this. So Ross, thank you so much for helping us out and coming back to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Before you go, let everybody know what you're up to, where they can find you, and what's going on.
Yeah. First of all, Jay, Dennis, thank you so much again. It's fun. And even as we're discussing things, I'm looking at a film that I've watched so many times. As one of us makes a singular point, it's just like, oh, is this going to change how I look at this film now? So it's fun to explore these things, even if, tomorrow morning I'm back to, oh yeah, this is what this means. Thank you for pushing me as a fan to get deeper into this as well. So I think that's super fun. In terms of what I'm doing, there's a lot of comic books coming out currently with Marvel and Lucasfilm together. So I just did the Cassian Andor one-off for the Rogue One 10th anniversary for Fantha Tracks. Shadow of Maul, I owe that to Mark Newbold and need to have that over to him by tomorrow morning, even though this will be a little bit later. But then Galaxy's Edge, Echoes of the Empire #2 comes out on May 27th. And Rogue One, the Jyn Erso one-off comes out June 3rd. So they're all hitting, and there's 3 different kind of series that I'm able to hit right now and do the recaps for Fantha Tracks.
Nice.
Awesome.
You got a lot going on.
We'll have to have you back to talk some comics. That's how I first started covering Star Wars back in 2015. Was doing issue by issue, and I kind of got away from that. But that would be a fun discussion to have. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate you taking some time every evening to come talk about some Star Wars with us. And everyone, go check out what he's doing over on Fantha Tracks. So, with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and this edition of our The Force Awakens series. If you've enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to the podcast on your podcatcher of choice if you haven't done so already. And of course, we appreciate your ratings and reviews. If you want to find the entire back catalog of the show, the best place to do that is over at retrozap.com, where you can find all previous 1,034 episodes of this show and all the other great shows that are on the network. Jay, you remind everybody what our social media contacts are and where else we can found online.
Absolutely. So we are on Facebook and Instagram most easily at Podcast Stardust. And you can also connect with us by tuning into our 2 YouTube channels. So we have the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. And so we'd love it if you'd subscribe to those, share those with your friends, and leave us some comments on those as well. So those do actually support interactions. So you can let us know what you thought of this segment as well as all the other ones that we've done. And we also have some Pinterest boards that you can check out for all kinds of fun things for everything Star Wars. And then we also have our email where you can drop us a line, especially if it's something that may be a little longer than what a DM might contain. So, or any of your other thoughts as well. So that would be podcaststardust@gmail.com. And then if you want to pick up some swag with some Podcast Stardust logos, we have 7 different show logo designs available. All you have to do is just follow the link in our show notes that will take you to our TeePublic store, and you can pick up some stuff there.
All right, Jay, what is the latest in cosplay?
Well, as always, you can catch me over on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And I have been posting quite a few things here, especially since my last appearance on May 3rd/4th weekend in New Philly, Ohio. So dribbling some of those things out and just always having a lot of fun over there. And never know what I'm going to be up to next. So once again, check that out at j.snipscosplay.
All right. Coming on the show on Friday, we'll be ending the week with a look at some recent Star Wars news. And then on Monday, it'll be the next installment in our The Clone Wars rewatch. So with that having said, thanks for listening to episode 1036 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.